entrepreneurship. I've been super excited for this one because I'm joined today by a true trailblazer of the e-commerce world who started his journey when the internet was still in its infancy. In 1996, Michael Shapiro launched what would become one of the earliest niche online art galleries. Over the nearly 30 years since, he has transformed this vision into Ketubah.com, the world's largest publisher of Ketubah art, representing over 75 artists and featuring nearly 1,000 designs. For our listeners, by the way, a ketubah is a Jewish marriage contract or document. Michael is an expert at identifying invisible opportunities and turning niche hobbies into global brands. But most importantly, he's a champion of the idea that your personal weirdness is actually your greatest competitive advantage. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It is an honor. You started an e-commerce art gallery in 1996 at a time when most people were still figuring out dial-up. What gave you that conviction that fine art could be sold over a computer screen?
Well, absolutely. And as your listeners may know, 1996, that's before Google. I would say it was a combination of passion and naivete. I fell in love with the art of this Jewish marriage document, and I was young enough and passionate enough that I thought, oh, I'm going to make a business out of this, even though lots of people said you can't possibly make a business out of that.
That is awesome. You have a phrase I love, personal weirdness. How can a business owner identify which of their weird traits is actually a bankable differentiator and which is just a distraction?
Excellent question. I think it takes a little bit of hit and miss. I had some early encouragement. So, for example, I went to a Jewish day school as a child, and I was the Hebrew language valedictorian at the end of high school. So that's not something you can take to the bank, but it was a little bit of an affirmation about, maybe there's something you can do with this passion, this skill of the Hebrew language. I also learned Yiddish at this school. And who knew that, years and years later, I could make a business out of it. But when I talk about weirdness, it's not just like weird, like crazy out there for the sake of out there. It usually is a combination of something that's unusual, unique to you, and a passion, something that you just, you just could do all day long, and the time would just fly.
So before we actually jumped on the air together, I've been thinking a lot about this next question. You have, as I understand, 75 different artists up on Ketubah.com. How do you manage the relationships with such a large creative community while maintaining a consistent brand identity for your customers?
So another great question. Well, in the beginning, it was just me, and I had relationships with about one artist first, a man by the name of Arden Halter, who I met while I was studying in Israel in 1995. And then there were 6, and then eventually there were 10 and 20 and 50. I've got a dedicated member of my team, and a huge part of her job is staying in touch with, listening to, addressing the needs of the artists, and making sure also that when we receive new art from artists, that all of their concerns are taken care of, that we send them a proof that they're happy with, so they feel like we are really valuing the artistic gold that they provide to us.
Well, if my math is mathing, you've been in business for 30 years. What's the biggest clutter or noise you've had to clear out of your business, stay relevant through the .com bubble, the rise of social media, and now the age of AI?
I would say that it's been a laser focus on one product. There are companies out there who pride themselves on doing one thing really, really well, and that's true of Ketubah.com. We do have other products. We have blessings for the home, and we recently launched a line that I'm very excited about of growing family trees. So it's family tree art that evolves as there's a wedding, as there's a birth. You can easily and beautifully add a new leaf to the tree. So staying relevant, listening for what's important to your customer, but having a laser focus on beautifully executed art. That's about tradition, that's about family over the long term.
So that's a perfect segue. Again, I'm chatting with Michael Shapiro, and many entrepreneurs are afraid of being too niche because they fear it limits their growth. How did you manage to scale a specific cultural tradition into a globally recognized publisher?
I think that it was one of the things about, one of these cases of being at the right place at the right time. So when I started this, I registered the domain name ketubah.com in spring of 1996. And by that time, there were many people who wanted an artistic ketubah for their wedding, whether it was a Jewish couple, an interfaith couple, same-sex couple. The ketubah is an ancient art form that really died out and started to be redeveloped in the 1970s. So by the time I got on the scene in 1996, lots of people wanted them, but it was a bit hard to find them. You had to either track down a local ketubah artist, maybe go to a local Judaica shop, which might have a little bit of a selection. So there was a pain point there that I was able to solve.
Amazing. Michael, what is your personal weirdness?
Well, my personal weirdness is a love of languages. When I was 2 years old, my mom decided that it would be a good idea to implement a French language immersion in our home for me. We lived in Montreal, and that was becoming more and more, French language was becoming more and more important in that part of Canada. And so she spoke French to me in the morning and English in the afternoon. And that gave me a foundation of language number one. Then going to the Jewish day school, in addition to English and French, learning Hebrew, Yiddish. So it's been languages. That includes lots of dad jokes, plays on words. And as you can imagine, thankfully, now that I'm a dad, it kind of fits. Whereas when I was a teenager, it didn't.
My takeaway so far, your journey isn't just about one site. It's about a career of diverse ventures and the ability to spot trends long before they become mainstream. We're going to continue our conversation with Michael Shapiro of ketubah.com when we come back in just a moment. Hey, welcome back to Get Down to Business. We're continuing our conversation with a true trailblazer of the e-commerce world. He started his journey when the internet was still in its infancy in 1996. Michael Shapiro launched ketubah.com, and it's now one of the first online art galleries, which is awesome. Michael, but I just learned something about you. You are also a published author. Tell us about that.
That's correct. So it's a long journey, a long time in the coming. Last August, the Jewish Publication Society, as your listeners may know, a major and venerable Jewish publisher, published a coffee table book that I wrote. And it's called Ketubah Renaissance, the Artful Modern Revival of the Jewish Marriage Contract. And the book is the first to tell the story of the rebirth of this ancient tradition.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating. We're going to, of course, make sure our listeners can find the book online in just a moment. So you've got this amazing website, a strong relationship with a creative community. Again, really a resource to folks at all different phases of life. And that's where I want to go next, because I know you are constantly innovating, my friend, and you're about to launch an entirely new initiative. Tell us about that.
Yes. So we've been the leading ketubah publisher for years and years and years. We're now taking a step beyond having written a book into the world of publishing a lifestyle magazine. It's going to be an e-magazine called Doing Jewish Today. We're going to be the first issue will be coming out just ahead of Passover. And our plan is to have 3 issues a year coinciding with Passover, the high holidays, and Hanukkah. And it's basically for the very large portions of the Jewish community who are very interested in expressing their Judaism and connecting with Jewish tradition in creative and relevant terms that are relevant to them. So we're very excited about that. There's going to be recipes. There's going to be recommendations for music and songs, and then all sorts of things about Hebrew names and weddings. It's not to be missed. Doing Jewish Today, coming out soon.
Amazing. Is there anything you can't do, Michael? This is amazing. And that's really where I want to spend our last minute or so talking about, is that we often talk about the mirror effect on this show, surrounding yourself with people that sort of reflect your background. How has your personal weirdness, and I mean that as a positive, by the way, Michael, helped you attract a personal board of directors that supports your non-traditional vision?
Well, that's a good question. I believe that the fact, when we talk about weirdness, it's about leaning into what's most essentially and uniquely me. And I believe that that's been a key to my success in surrounding myself with other entrepreneurs. For example, I'm a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global organization. I also met some like-minded people taking the Strategic Coach course for entrepreneurs a number of years ago. And what I found is that by leaning into what's most quintessentially me, it puts people at ease because I'm making myself vulnerable by being somewhat different, not just trying to fit into what everyone else is doing. And I think that helps everyone else to put their guard down and then express what they're looking for. And I listened to your show with I think it was Dr. Sheila Gujarati around mirroring, just wonderful insights, and it's been true in my life and my business as well.
Michael, I have learned so much in our conversation, and I want to make sure our listeners can find your website, find out all about you and about your amazing projects and your book and everything, with coming attractions too. How can we do so?
Absolutely. The best place to go is ketuba.com. So I'll spell it. It's KETUB as in boy, AH.com. Ketuba.com is the place to go to get all of the information about ketubas, about the growing family trees, and it will also be the place to find doing Jewish today, as well as an ebook that we put out last year, which is Jewish Wedding 101. So if you're having a Jewish interfaith or LGBTQ plus wedding, that's the place to go. To find me on Instagram, Ketuba Michael, and that's me.
Congratulations on 30 years in business. That's a wrap for us this week on the show, all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. We will be back, of course, next week, right here on AM 560 The Answer, wherever podcasts can be found. To success, let's get down to business.